It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, how we doing?
I'm doing good. Good mood today for Monday. I don't know why. Just things are flowing. So
OTAs week 2 starts tomorrow. You will be there obviously for 3 practices. I don't know that has anything to do with it, but I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not sure. Maybe nothing really, I guess, super newsy. Not saying that I'm sure you've been, typing away, writing stories, but nothing super newsy that needed immediate attention. I don't know. I don't have an answer for you why you're in a good mood on a Monday.
I just saying.
Maybe it was this email that I want to read from Max that we got. Started off. This is how you do it, folks. First question I have for you, Alan and Zach, is when did you both realize that you were awesome at this? Where I live, deep inside Ravens country, y'all are an escape to being back in the Bird. So I guess we can discuss that part first. So it's in Alan, you've done obviously like radio hits for a long time and have been a guest on a podcast for a while, but is this the first podcast that you've actually been like a co-host or host of?
I did do some other stuff in the past that was never this long. It was all like shorter format.
Okay.
And not really like what I would call like sort of traditional. It was more like short stand-up video stuff, as opposed to like podcast style. So no, this is really the first time I'd ever done anything like this. I did not know I was awesome at it. I mean, I can talk. I knew that. My family can vouch for my ability to talk. I'll be honest. I'm not speaking for both of us, but I'll speak for myself. I don't know how much I'm awesome at this as it was. I knew I had a really good idea for a podcast that was going to work.
No, you could definitely speak for me with saying that as well, because I don't know that I would categorize myself as being awesome at this. It's just something that I really enjoy doing. However, I will say it was a feather in my cap, the fact that you reached out to me to do it. Like that was, to me, a bit humbling that you wanted me to be the guy alongside with you if you were going to host something on a daily basis.
Well, I was really happy that you said yes. I knew that this was going to work, that it was a good idea, that I was at a point in my career where like I had enough of a personal audience that I could sort of jumpstart it and get it going and help it become something. So I don't really know if I had like a podcast about something else that like I'm just naturally talented at this. I think it just we have a format that nobody else has. I think we offer unique perspectives and insights. We're funny. We get along. Like I just think there's a bit of a secret sauce here that I'm not sure is the result of either of us specifically being just so darn good at this.
And the nature of the topic that we talk about, the Pittsburgh Steelers, I mean, we talk about it all the time, how passionate this fan base is and how wide spanning it is, not just nationally, globally in terms of this fan base. So I don't want to say it makes it easy, but it certainly makes it easier for us to discuss.
And I think the format of the NFL schedule is very unique as well. Could you imagine doing a Pirates podcast every day in the off season? In the like 30 minutes a day on the Pirates in the off season?
Tyler and I talk about that all the time, actually, because like we only do it in season, obviously, and we're like, hey, shout out to the North Shore 9 guys and anybody else.
Guys man, like I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. Those guys are great, by the way. Check them out.
Anybody that does daily content for them deserves it. But I appreciate the comment, obviously, here from Max and all the great comments that we get from people that feel similarly and decide to spend a portion of their day with us here. But he did have a serious question regarding the offseason within this afterwards. Are the days of family-owned NFL franchises where wealth is exclusively tied up in the team nearing an end? Can the Rooneys keep a majority of ownership much longer? Without an outside business generating capital, the Rooneys can reinvest in the Steelers. The maximum stakes the Steelers already sold to outsiders and growing number of Rooney descendants owning a piece as well. Doesn't that equal the Rooney era probably closing soon? When I hear that players are feel the facilities are substandard or the coaching staff is restricted by what the Rooneys can afford to hire and pay, I see signs that this could all come to an end out of nowhere and sooner than anyone expects. Example, the Orioles recently. Keep it up, says Max and Monken. Or Monkton, sorry.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I definitely think there are positives and negatives to having legacy ownership. One of the big positives is you have someone who's running the Pittsburgh Steelers who has been involved with football since he was born. And you do not have that everywhere. Just because you're rich doesn't make you good at this. And so now the other corollary is just because you're born into a specific family doesn't make you good at this either. I mean, I think we've seen, plenty of examples where, the certain son of someone doesn't turn out to be able to live up to the standard of their father. But I think if I had to pick between those two, I would rather have someone deeply embedded in football than someone who just happens to be a billionaire for some other reason. I do think the Steelers have definite disadvantages in terms of what they're able to just throw money at. It very much is family business. I've been talking to some people in Washington. Their new owner, Josh Harris, who was formerly one of those minority owners of the Pittsburgh Steelers, had to sell his stake when he bought the Commanders. He also owns 76ers, the New Jersey Devils. I think he owns part of a Premier League team. And he owned a venture capital company. This guy's got money stacked up as high as he can stand. I've talked to some Washington people about how he was able to make big sweeping changes in the organization very quickly because he just fired everyone he didn't like, replaced them with the best of the best, spent a lot of money on facilities and just things that aren't necessarily like big ticket facilities, but like, hey, we're upgrading all our menus and our kitchen and we're doing this and we're doing that. And it's like, it's a lot easier to fix problems with money. It's a slower process when you have to do it in a budget, and the Steelers have less margin for error. If Josh Harris goes out and Cliff Kingsbury had been a massive failure as an offensive coordinator, which was very possible given Cliff Kingsbury's history.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
He could have fired him after one season, ate the rest of his 3-year contract and gone out and hired somebody else. The Steelers can't do that. They're not going to do that. And so, like, when you look at, like, the Steelers hired Arthur Smith, the Commanders hired Cliff Kingsbury. Arthur Smith is a lot safer bet. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that's the only reason they picked him, but it does factor into it for the Steelers the way it doesn't for another organization that doesn't care about writing off $10 million on an offensive coordinator that's not going to coach for you anymore. So, I mean, are these going to go away? I don't think so. I would be surprised if they go away. Will certain of them go away? Sure, they're not all going to. But also at the same time, you're gonna have people like Arthur Blank. Okay, Arthur Blank bought the Falcons in 2002. He made his money owned Home Depot, right? Okay, but like Arthur Blank's kids are gonna take over, right? Jim Irsay's daughter is taking over in Indianapolis, right? So these people that aren't these legacy ownership are going to start to become that over time. So, I mean, there are only, if you go like talking about like families that go back to the beginning of the NFL, there's only 2 or 3. So like, that's still going to be pretty rare, but I mean, I don't think the concept of hand-me-down ownership is going anywhere.
That's you kind of touched on the question that I was going to ask as a follow-up there, like not getting away from them being family owned, but like they would have to be wealthier families potentially, or if they would be a more exclusive group of family. I mean, like the Walton family owning the Broncos, like with the amount of money they have, that doesn't have to change. But you mentioned some other examples within there too. But like specifically as it relates to the Steelers, do you see that time ever coming where it's going to be like, I don't want to say priced out, but like they realize it's such a disadvantage that they just decide to move on, or no?
I think the Steelers have an interesting problem because the Rooneys had a lot of kids. And so the shares are all split up into a bunch of different pieces. And already once the NFL has stepped in to force them, back when Dan Rooney was still the primary owner, they forced Dan and Art to consolidate the shares of their family. They had to buy out some of Dan's brothers and Art's cousins, and Art's brothers and sisters, from, to get somebody has to own 30% of the team, one person. And so every generation that you pass it down, especially when the value of the team rises so dramatically over time, that becomes a more and more difficult process. And so, look, I don't think it's gonna go away, but like, I'm also not exactly sure what the plan is after Art Rooney. And if the plan is like Dan Rooney's around a good bit with the team now. He's been in the front office for a number of years. Certainly seems like he's being groomed to take over. But like, how does the money work? How does the math work? I don't know. You got a guy like Thomas Tull who owns a significant minority of the team. The money's not a problem for him. And he's been fairly ambitious about acquiring more. So, like, then what happens? Well, let's just say, Art Rooney, hopefully a long time from now, passes away. And then, for Dan to inherit the team, he's got to buy up some shares to some other people. And now there's a bidding war for them, right? And like, are these people committed enough to family ownership to not sell them to someone else so that somebody can get the 30%, or that somebody that Art had wanted to get the 30% can get there? I don't know. It's complicated stuff. So like, I wouldn't necessarily rule out the idea of it going away, but I don't think the concept in any specific case, but I don't think the concept of it is going away from the NFL anytime soon.
Yeah. I think, I don't know, what was it, just last Thursday or Friday? I said, I just appreciate anytime somebody comes to us with a question or thought of something I had not previously considered. And this was definitely not something that I had given any thought. So I don't know, maybe I could have a much more expanded answer for you once I think on this more. But I mean, just as I sit here now, I don't see it necessarily going away. I'm curious about if we see more like I don't know how to word the exclusive families as opposed to maybe some of these smaller ones. But we'll see. We'll see what happens down the road. I think the Steelers are an interesting one to watch just because the Rooney so specifically, right? Like didn't make their money somewhere. Like this is the revenue for
well, they
them.
made their money
like,
in horse racing. It was just a long time ago.
Yeah. Right. But I'm saying in terms of like, I hate to minimize the amount of money, obviously, but like compared to other owners in the NFL, you look at where the Rooneys are, and it's not close. Which is what you were saying throughout your answer there, obviously.
You talk about like the owners, the principal owners who are worth the least in the NFL. I mean, Mike Brown's right there. Another, hand-me-down, son of the founder, Paul Brown. Art Rooney's right there. I mean, like, those are, and just because the owner's worth it doesn't mean he wants to spend it on the team, but you can't if you don't have it.
Right. Absolutely. There was one leftover thing here for sure that I wanted to get to from the Twitter questions from Friday. Mark replied a little bit after the episode had already been up, but we still appreciate the question, Mark, so we'll answer this for you. Which of this year's crop of UDFAs do you feel most likely has a chance to make the roster this season? I feel like, to me, it's Sebastian Castro, number one. I think you look at the safety depth that's there, his ability to potentially contribute in the slot as well. So I think versatility is on his side. I think the lack of depth at the position is on his side. I think he's a good player. I think, in my opinion, should have gone on day 3 of the draft as opposed to have being a UDFA. So that's the first one I look at. And then we've talked about, obviously, the likes of Rock Taylor. There's certainly opportunity within the wide receiver room as well. So if I'm picking one from each side, it's probably those two.
I would say I agree with those choices, but just to add a name, probably on offense, so I think maybe has just as good a chance as Rock Taylor is DJ Thomas Jones. Fullback, tight end, H-back kind of guy. A little bit of a different kind of athlete than Connor Hayward. He's a little taller. I think he's a little faster. We'll see if he can block better. I think that'll be the real thing. But I think those two guys are in a two-man competition for one spot, which probably gives him better odds than just about any other undrafted free agent because there's less, there's less other factors at play there.
Yeah, somehow it always happens. I have a follow-up question on my mind. You end up answering it because I was going to say, is there a path still for Connor Hayward if DJ Thomas Jones does make the roster?
Probably not. No, that's one spot, two guys. And other than that, I don't. Maybe if they trade for Jonnu Smith or something like that, things change. But I think the other three tight end spots are fairly filled. So I think that's probably one spot. Just maybe you could kind of include Cordell Patterson in there, assuming he's not going to be running back 3, where he could take that job away by making the team as a 4th running back. Not saying he would be doing the same things, but they would decide they want a 4th running back more than they want a 4th tight end.
I like this question from Jaden here in the YouTube comments. What story/information are you allowed to talk about or not talk about? Feel like you could give us better understanding of who GP was inside the locker room now that he's gone, but I understand he was traded because they wouldn't re-sign him, but the antics had to have been worse than what the public was aware of.
Yeah. What I can say and what I can't say. Well, that's interesting. There are certain things at there are hard and fast rules. I'm not allowed to talk about what I see at practice after the initial 30-minute photography window where I can put video out of it, unless I get a player or a coach to talk about it on the record. So that's a rule, right? And then other than that, it's all gray area stuff. People tell me stuff off the record. I can't use it. I can't repeat it. So if, Tyler calls me tomorrow and says off the record, Smitty's gonna, whatever, quit podcasting and move to the South Pole. I can't tell anybody that because he told me off the record. Then there's some other stuff where it's I can say it, but I can't say where I heard it. So I can say I'm hearing in the locker room, or I've heard from people close to the team, or things like that, where I can kind of tell you some things, but I can't give you the source of that information. And then there's some things where I technically as a reporter would be well within my rights to say, but I also have to consider the relationships I have with the people involved and how much I want to make them angry at me. And that's very difficult. So in terms of specifically what more color I can add to George Pickens being traded, George failed to meet the minimum requirements of being an NFL player repeatedly. And I think that's the best way I can say it. I don't think he was hated personally. I think he was generally tolerated, if not well liked, personality wise. But he did things that you are not allowed to do as an NFL player repeatedly. And at some point, if you are a team that intends to have any sense of discipline, you can't allow that to just continue forever. And I don't think anyone in the locker room was surprised that he was traded. And I think the majority of the locker room was just fine with that.
I almost got a sense of relief from some guys, knowing that they weren't going to have to do the whole babysitting duty or, be in charge of reeling him in on the sidelines, or non-wide receivers, or I guess, pass catchers having to sit in on those meetings just to make sure things didn't get out of hand. There's so many things, but I think what's an interesting thing that I wanted to add on to this to ask you, and I know that because you take a lot of pride, you're what you do. I know that you take a lot of pride in, doing your job well, and you owe it to your audience to give them as much information stuff as possible. So being that that's the case, how do you kind of juggle that along with what you can and can't tell or feel like you shouldn't, even if you technically can?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, it's all gray area. There will be times where something I think is so important that I have to be willing to make people angry to say. And I'll give an example. I think one of those things was when we reported about Kenny Pickett not wanting to dress in Seattle.
Yeah.
I knew that was going to make people upset. I also knew
Mhm.
it was true. I thought that was important enough that we had to tell people, even if it was going to keep us from maybe getting some more information in the future. That's the thing. It's not like I care about my relationships with these people. It's about balancing how much is this story worth to my audience versus the future stories that I'm throwing away by reporting this one. It's not, you don't get in this job for people to like you. Like, you just don't. You just assume that they're not going to, and if they happen to, it's a big bonus. But I think you have to balance how much is reporting this story worth versus ruining relationship, and what could that relationship yield in the future that might be far more important than this. And that's a difficult job. It's a job of every reporter, and I try to do it as best as I can. I'm far from perfect. I definitely have gotten those decisions wrong in the past and probably will in the future, because it's not easy and there's no manual for it. Every case is different, and you got to try to make the best decisions you can.
Yeah. I mean, well, yeah, that's a good example that you used too. That didn't even occur to me, but yeah, that was certainly to this day still people feel some type of way when that topic comes up. So certainly. Okay, like this question, obviously, I think it's a good question, but username alone, PandaMat72412. I mean, listen, other than just saying nice things about Alan and I, if you got a good username, that's another way that you'll get me. At least I'm not sure how Alan weighs that, but you'll get me.
I've actually read one of his questions on Morning Rush before, so we're
there we go.
We're certified fans.
All right, pound them out. All right, so the year before TJ Watt came to Pittsburgh, we were in the AFC Championship game. If Le'Veon Bell doesn't get hurt, probably get to the Super Bowl. I understand a lot of things have happened in the next 2 years, but since TJ joined this team, haven't come close to winning in the playoffs, blowout after blowout. He hasn't been available for half of these games or made no impact. So here's the question: at 31 years old in October of 2025, coming off worst season to date, do you truly believe that he is worth paying $40 million plus per year?
I do, and I don't even really think it's a difficult decision. People get so focused on the number. You have to
percentage of the cap.
You have actually to change what you think is a lot of money when the cap goes up.
Yeah.
And the cap has gone significantly up in the last 2 years, to the point that I actually think $40 million for TJ Watt and Myles Garrett is actually a bargain. I think they're worth more to those teams. I think if you actually sat down and tried to figure out what are those players worth to their teams compared to other players making similar money, I think that's actually cheap. I think where the cap is right now, the best edge rusher is probably worth $50 million. And so I don't think there's any problem paying TJ 40. I think they're actually undervalued.
40 million in 2025 will be less of the percentage of the cap than 28 was in 2021 when TJ signed his last extension.
Would you rather have TJ? Here's the question: would you rather have TJ Watt or the 13th best quarterback? Because that's about where you're going to be with $40 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Would you rather have TJ Watt or Kirk Cousins? Like, come on, people. I would much rather have TJ Watt than Kirk Cousins. And like, if you sit there and say that was a bad contract, the Kirk Cousins contract was an awful contract. I'm not going to fight you. But if you have 15 of them, then that's just the market. That just is what it is. Like, you can't escape it at that point. Yes, TJ is not only is he worth $40 million, he's easily worth more than $40 million. I don't know anyone in NFL circles who was surprised that there was going to be an edge rusher that was going to get $40 million this offseason. In fact, it was a near certainty. This idea that the Browns overpaid for Myles Garrett is the wrongest thing that I'm routinely hearing around the NFL right now. Everyone I've talked to inside the league was sure that those guys were getting $40 million this offseason. Sure. Not like thought maybe, sure.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I've heard is that some people were surprised it happened so early in the offseason.
That's what I was going to say.
Room for people to move on top of it afterward.
Yeah.
But I am not at all surprised that Garrett got $40 million. He's worth every penny. Watt will get more just because his contract is coming later. I actually think Garrett is probably worth more than Watt. If I had the two of them in front of me and I had my pick, I would want Garrett more than Watt. He's younger, has been injured less. But, I mean, that's what they're worth. I don't know what I understand it's a lot of money, and it sounds like a lot of money, but it is, compared to the NFL budget and the salary cap, quite a deal.
And what you said, to me, was what I was going to bring up in terms of when it happened, because I think that's the thing. Like, even if you thought those two were going to get 40, Myles Garrett kind of put his foot on the back of the neck there of the Browns to, I guess, get that contract with the trade request, put out a statement and make it happen earlier. Because I think a lot of people would have said, we'll see like this gradual increase. And I'm sure one of these guys or two of these guys will clip $40 million, but somebody will probably pass Danielle Hunter's 36 within that group before that 40 happens. And it didn't happen. So, I mean, yeah, still certainly.
Think about that. Like, how much better is TJ Watt than Danielle Hunter?
Yeah.
Like, a lot.
Yeah.
How much better is Myles Garrett than, like, those players are not close to comparable.
So I think the one thing within this, to me, that's been fair to bring up, and we've certainly talked about on here before, and I don't know what the level of concern is for you, but in terms of TJ's impact down the stretch, the last few seasons, whether it's injury that's happened or even maybe playing through injury, whatever the reason is that we've seen the production fall off towards the end of the year, which again, I'll bring up defending, the pick that I didn't like in Jack Sawyer. If it means that he and Herbig get on the field more, give Highsmith and Watt breathers, and we see those two more productive throughout the entirety of the season because of that, because they're playing more like 80% of the snaps as opposed to 80 to 85% of the snaps or whatever it might be. And, less is more, quality over quantity in terms of the snaps. Then I think that that's where the benefit could be. And maybe that's the case, because I can understand if there's a little bit of trepidation here with TJ, given what we've seen since his unbelievable year in 2021, whether it's 22 with the pec, 23 getting injured right before the playoff game. Then obviously we saw how last year went.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's definitely, look, TJ got hurt last year in the Eagles game. He wasn't the same afterwards. Got hurt in the Ravens game the year before, missed the playoff game against the Bills. So, I mean, you talk about the most impactful games of the Steelers last couple seasons. He's either been hurt and not available or playing hurt and way less than 100%. That definitely is part of the conversation. I think it's fair and reasonable to look at the way JJ Watt aged throughout his career. And look, he didn't necessarily have the world's greatest availability after the age of 30. He was, hit or miss for a lot of those seasons. He had a span of like 5 or 6 years where he only had 2 full seasons. So you look at TJ and I think it's fair to say, how long is he going to be a full-time contributor? And I think that's where the length of the contract might actually be the biggest sticking point in this discussions. Whether you're $40 million to me is a no-brainer. None. It's fine. Totally okay. But like 3 years versus 4 years to me feels significant at this age, because you're, and how much are you, and how much of it are you guaranteeing? I think that's a significant part of the discussion. So yeah, I think that's fair. To me, it doesn't discount his performance enough to make him just not worth what I think is just the going rate for a really good edge rusher right now.
And the last thing that I want to bring up before we get out of here as it relates to the contract and paying him and stuff. I mean, where else is that money going to go to right now? Like, this is the time to me, like, you kind of got to spend this money. Like, you're going to have a QB on a rookie
comment about Aaron Rodgers here. The Steelers want to wait until Aaron Rodgers is done so they know exactly how much they can put of TJ Watt's money in this season, right? They don't want to front load it necessarily, but like they also don't want to go into the offseason with $30 million in cap space either. Like they don't want to have this huge unspent carryover. I mean, the ideal sort of situation is to spend to the cap every year. And so they definitely want to have Aaron Rodgers' number in mind before they go into a negotiation with TJ Watt so they know where they want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was the last thing I was thinking of was, whether it's obviously Aaron this year and then we keep talking about it. Obviously, we think next year is where they want to throw that dart on a rookie QB. If you're going to have that type of contract, like where else are you spending the money with the cap continuing to go up? Like, I don't know if you're not allocating that percentage of the cap, that's what I'm going to say, as opposed to the $40 million, say that percentage. Like, where would you be spending the money on? Like, I don't know. Like, so
yeah, there's nothing out there in free agency.
Yeah.
Cross Jedrick Wills on the list too. We that was the one guy we kind of talked about.
Jedrick Wills
that maybe would be out there. Just reported by Jordan Schultz today that he's still dealing with that lingering knee injury and is probably going to sit out most, if not all, of this season. So yeah, there's another one.
More power to him. Certainly has not lived up to that billing of the 10th overall pick in that draft class, but hopefully he gets his career back on track after stepping away and getting that knee right. But we'll be back for another one of these, Alan. We have you'll be back at OTAs, so we'll be able to talk about some takeaways from week 2, day 1 of OTAs. Until then, Alan, tell the people to find you.
Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. PGH Steelers Now is the site's account. SteelersNow.com. Go there, read the words so I can get paid. Sale for SN Plus, and I need to do a better job of promoting this. We'll get some materials out there for you as well. But $12 for an entire year, limited time sale. SN Plus memberships. We're still doing our monthly live streams. We'll have one coming up later in June, and then all the best stuff. The Southside Scoop article, I got one in the can from last week already. And I'm also going to do, again, as I did last offseason after minicamp, my 90 thoughts on 90 players, which is the longest story I've ever written in my life. We're gonna do it again just for SN Plus subscribers. So take advantage, man. $12 does not come around very often. Definitely get that. And the ad-free SteelersNow.com is the absolute best part. The ads, terrible. Ad-free, way better. Sign up, get it done. Of course, you can also subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications here on the YouTube channel. That's free. Definitely helps us out a lot as we try to reach a bigger and bigger audience all the time. And we now have a nice little bump here over the weekend, actually. 15,800 and Jim Miller, 16.
Okay, I'm glad it didn't go up or down. I wanted to give Lance Moore a shout out on this podcast. I was going to go with the guy who at one point was wide receiver 3 last year and then didn't even end up making the roster, and Quez Watkins. But Lance Moore on my mind. Touchdown that he scored against the Texans where he hit the whip. That celebration just lives rent free in my mind.
There you
go.
Shout
out to Lance Moore. But $12 for a year of SN Plus. And there's 12 months in a year. That's $1 a month, Alan.
It's quite a deal.
If my math is correct there.
Yeah, I think you can trust your math on that one.
Be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, as Alan said. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else. Have not gotten any 5-star reviews since that last one that I read, and I understand nobody wants to follow it up. But let's get another 5-star review. Try your best. We won't hold it against you if it doesn't live up to that billing quite, because that was great. But be sure to do so. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing over on TikTok, and then you'll find me everywhere. Zachary Smith, PGH, Alan Saunders, and myself. Thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.